Hello, you are listening to the 151st episode of Algorütm podcast. I am Priit Liivak from Nortal, and your co-hosts today are Tiit Paananen from Veriff and Martin Kappo from Pipedrive. As you might have noticed, our episode today is again in English. It seems that we are having one approximately in every 25 or 30 episodes. So some time ago, we spoke with Benedict about moving from Germany to Estonia and working here as a developer. If that's something that interests you, go check out our 109th episode from 9th of December last year. So that was a really good episode. I kind of re-listened it while walking a dog today. So some good points there.
Yeah, so one day we just covered the whole Europe. So Germany,
yes.
Now
yes.
France.
So this is our expansion plan to do it.
So if we do it like once per year, then it would take us how many years to complete all of the European map?
Yeah, I think we need to speed it up. But today our guest is Pierre Fouchet, a developer who also decided to continue his career in Estonia and came to work here at Dynatrace. Welcome to Algorütm.
Thanks.
So let's start a bit about your background back before Dynatrace.
So Pierre, first, I assume you are not avid Algorütm listener. So have you heard about Algorütm before?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to do more English episodes.
Yeah, I was trying to find videos and podcast in English, and the last few were in Estonian. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We need to have a separate kind of listing of English episodes. So
and we put on you now to do proper advertising in Dynatrace.
Yes, I'm already starting to do it.
Awesome.
So, for my background, I am a software engineer, and in France, I started working in 2014. At the very beginning, it was just software engineering for a connected kitchen. It's Group Seb, which does small appliances. I had some other experiences with Enedis, which is in France is quite something you can't miss because it's handling the electricity network of the country. So it's quite big, and they had a very big project in the town I was living before, in Lyon, in France. It's always software engineering, mainly Java. And I discovered some full stack development, so Java with Angular. That was very nice because it's a great way to do new things in the same programmation kind of mindset. But at some point, I was thinking that I wanted more challenges or something new. So that's why I started looking for moving out of France. And that's why I'm here in Tallinn today.
So in France, I understand the company who manages the electricity grid is a big enterprise. But about the connected kitchen, was that kind of a startup-like organization or more like a established?
It was established. It's more like an industrial company that was trying to switch to a more digital company. So it was quite interesting because they have very big processes in that kind of industry because they were manufacturing pan and cooking things. So it's really manufacturing. And they wanted to do a connected kitchen. So it was like two processes colliding, and it was not really smooth every time. But it was an interesting challenge, more human challenge.
Right. So Pierre, tell me, are you an exception in a way, looking for opportunities outside of France? Or this is something that people are doing more and more these days?
I think more and more people are thinking about moving out or moving, generally speaking, because I would say because of the COVID maybe. It made people think a lot, and at least for me. But so moving out, I would say I'm not really sure if a lot of French are ready to leave the country because there is quite a strong barrier language. We have quite a bad reputation with our language skills. Like we are not really proficient with English and other languages. And I think French people really believe in that, even if it's not really true, or even if you can still work abroad if you don't have a perfect English, it is fine. But I think there is some kind of censorship.
I mean, the French people that I've heard, like almost everyone that I've worked with have strong accents, but it doesn't really matter if you're in an international company, it feels like, because everybody has their own accents. I have mine, what the German people have theirs, and then everybody has their own type of thing, and it's kind of interesting actually in a way. So
yeah,
from an Estonian company's perspective, I feel like it's a really cool thing to have different kind of nationalities, even if the English is, well, everybody has their accents. You know the words, but the accents, right?
Yeah. But I guess we are feeling more bad about it than others.
You shouldn't. So you started in 2014, but when did you decide you want to move to Estonia? And what was the actual, what was your reason behind it?
I would say it started with after the second lockdown in France. So it was somewhere in 2021, I believe, or end of 2020. I don't really remember now. But
yeah, it's all fuzzy times for us as well.
Yes. We're so focused in just going through it. I would say during the COVID, it was fine because it was more you have to react to what is happening. So you change your habit, you continue working. It's all new and somehow it's an adventure. And then after that, at least for me, it was like, okay, I've seen what it was to live in some kind of parallel reality where you don't do the thing you used to do. And at that time, I was understanding that some things I was doing just because of habit, it was really not good for me. And the work I was just doing because you start something and you would just continue doing it. It was not working anymore for me. So let's say after the second lockdown, in my mind, something just clicked and it was just, okay, too much. The work is not the right thing. Before I had dreams of working abroad and I just left them in a corner because life happened at that time. So many things, I had the opportunity to reflect on it and it was the right time.
So I kind of get the sense that you went through many things at the same time, and that was actually the result of it.
A perfect storm.
Yes, I guess.
But how did you find Estonia? Did you find Estonia and then you found Dynatrace, or did you find Dynatrace and that led to Estonia?
So I had in mind, it was like two lists. I had the list of the tech companies and the list of the countries that were matching my criteria. My criteria were about working in an English environment because just learning completely the language of the country is just, I think, too much for me. Just English working environment is very fine. So in Europe, I would say a lot of countries are good enough, but a colleague was saying that in Estonia and in Tallinn, people were speaking a lot in English, or it was really fine to live as a foreigner in Tallinn. So it stood out a little bit from my list. And then for the tech part, I wanted to go into a company that was doing handling more technical issues. Because even for the kitchen, the digital kitchen thing and the electricity grid, it was more like crude application. So I knew that kind of thing. I think I'm proficient with that. That's done. And I wanted to dive deeper in the technical part. And so Dynatrace is quite a good example because quickly we are getting to the low level in Java, for example. So for the technical part, it's just great.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the first part that you heard that in Estonia there's a lot of English. From what I've heard from people who have lived here for a while now, it's even like actually the turns are the other way around. Whereas if they wanted to learn Estonian and go to a store and want to practice, and then whenever Estonians hear like a subtle hint of accent or whatever,
they start talking in
this
English.
guy is probably yeah, exactly. They start speaking in English. So sometimes it might be even tough to learn Estonian if you're here. Because I've noticed the same thing. Estonians tend to, move to English pretty fast, actually.
So too much English.
Yeah.
or even Russian. Russian folks have complained that when you say something in Estonian with heavy Russian accent, you get a Russian answer. So that's, I guess, a feature of a small nation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we try to adapt to kind of the opposing party. So at some point you had picked up the job proposal, or not? You found a job ad from Dynatrace in Tallinn. How did that process go? Kind of joining this organization, maybe comparing this to your previous experiences in France. What was similar? What was different?
I would say before I did one agency, IT agency, that were not extremely focused on the people part. I don't know if you have that kind of thing in Estonia, but in France, the market of IT is most of the work is done by IT agency, and then you have some IT project in customers that maybe not focus on the digital part. For example, the connected kitchen. So in France, we kind of feel like we are a piece of meat.
Yeah,
when
you
we
kind of
produce
a resource, right? Yeah.
And when I applied to Dynatrace, it was really like, okay, it's a company that produces IT and we are human resources, but we are treated way better than just resources.
Consider the value.
Yeah.
Instead of resource.
Yes. And it was very interesting because even at the beginning, when I started talking with the recruiter, his work title was talent magnet. So it's not just a recruiter. It's even if it's more like a fancy name, still there is some part of truth in how he sees this job. So it's more like, okay, they are trying to take care of people. And after that, with the HR department, it was really good. It's good communication. And one interesting thing is most of the recruiting process was done with directors of Dynatrace. And it's quite, at least for me, unusual to directly discuss with directors. Usually it's more, okay, one manager maybe, one principal engineer, but here it was directors and principal engineers and architects. So it was quite a good experience because you can really see that they take time in picking people just to be sure that it's aligned with what they want. And at the same time, it just gives a good vibe because we are going through the recruitment process with someone already quite high in the hierarchy. So it's like they are valuing us, even if we are just interviewing.
Did you find it difficult? I mean, it had to have some technical aspects in it. Was it a difficult recruitment process for you in terms of kind of completing it successfully? I understood it was fluent and you enjoyed it, but still technically, was it difficult?
I would say it was very efficient. It was not difficult because it's more open question, open problems. So it's more about how far you can go with the problem. I applied to other companies at the same time. So I was comparing the recruiting process, and another one was Glovo in Barcelona. And they tried to do the same thing as Amazon and Google and stuff like that with a 5 steps process, technical design, algorithm and things like that. And it's so artificial. But here in Dynatrace, it was, I would say, pleasant to do. And it was matching what I would do on a day-to-day basis. Some design questions, some optimization things, but really based on code, not based on just something that is taken from an exercise book. So a little bit difficult, but good.
That's definitely a challenge for any organization with a decent size to figure out this balance between kind of this structured, form-based recruitment and this personalized, very customizable approach. Because if you fall into either end, you're going to have difficulties in either in user experience or recruitment experience. But on the other hand, you're going to have challenge with allocating time of your people, but because it's like if you have directors doing all these interviews all the time, then they cannot do anything else. But it's good to hear that Dynatrace has nailed that balance between these two things.
I think it's also they want to attract a specific kind of software engineer. So by doing this kind of recruitment process, they will attract people that are not really into hacker rank stuff. And that's fine. And Glovo is targeting that kind of thing, and that's fine if it works for them. But at least, for me, I prefer that way.
I think candidate experience is definitely something everyone in Estonia tries to work on, especially in current market conditions. But it's just as important to work for kind of a developer experience for existing employees.
Yeah, I think the market is the keyword here. So markets where there is a huge shortage of candidates, right? They go extra mile and validate the cultural fit, etc., etc. And the markets where there is plenty of candidates, they just skim the cream and move on, right? So and with that, you always it's often also very competitive environments, and people are not necessarily happy in these organizations where you have lots of superstars combined.
Yeah, you have to have balance in everything, I guess. Yeah. You need some guys who know a lot, but some guys also who want to do a lot, which are not necessarily the same guys always.
Some guys who are stuck with their old ways of thinking, and some guys who just have a potential and hunger, right?
Yeah.
I have one last question about the recruitment. How much of it happened on site and how much of it was off site over some video calls?
It was 100% remote.
Nice. And so after that, you moved to Estonia to work with the local team. Did you have a chance to kind of see the team as well over the calls?
Yes, because the first recruitment interview was with directors from Linz. And the second one was with architect and engineer from Tallinn lab.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So when you arrived to Estonia, what were your first experiences? What happened next in terms of organizational onboarding?
For the onboarding part, I had an accommodation paid by the company, so it was very smooth. I just arrived at the end of the day and picked the key, and it was settled. And then I started working and found my flat. Also had some help for the administrative part. About registering the living address and things like that. Even if it's quite easy because I'm coming from France, so I don't need visa, it's still always good to have someone around to explain you should go to this place first and register and then doing other things and get your ID card. So
explaining how things work here. Kind of a support in that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things for companies who hire from abroad is to have the onboarding also not only into the company but also into the country, because there's some websites, some digital forums you would have to fill out, some places where you can look for new apartments, some places where you need to get this, as you say, these ID cards or whatever. Tax things. There's a lot of things that are different from the country where you're coming from. So all the companies who invest into getting hires from outside of Estonia should also think about what's happening after they actually accept, right? So there's a lot of onboarding into we want to integrate you both in the company and in the country as well, right? To make it easy as possible.
And the good thing is, with Estonia, I have the feeling that there is a good program to integrate foreigners into the day-to-day living thing in the country. With the website Work in Estonia, there is a Facebook group, events. They are super quick to answer, so it's so useful.
Yeah, it's really good that if the country is of small size as ours, it's easy to have this kind of organization like Work in Estonia, and that figures out everything for a large number of people who are coming here. Considering size of France, it would be much more difficult to have a similar organization with kind of people knowing it to the same extent as people know Work in Estonia in Estonia.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, although is in the bigger countries you have these sort of town-based communities, and that's more manageable. So in case of Barcelona, for example, they are totally independent and not really connected to Spain in any way. They're just welcoming you into this small town of Barcelona.
So you have your local laws and local legislation, and it's become super difficult, I guess.
So what was the biggest surprise for you when you started working in Estonia?
Let's put it this way: what were your expectations when you moved here, and what was the reality afterwards?
Yeah, let's do it that way.
I would say I was expecting maybe only English talk at work, but it doesn't happen. People speak with language they handle the best. So sometimes people are switching in Estonian or Russian, and it's like, oh, okay, I won't understand anything now. So usually it's not for the main discussions, but it's more, there are a lot of information exchange out, not in meetings, more like when you take a coffee or things like that, you take a
coffee
break.
Coffee machine
and
talk.
That kind of thing is pretty important, and I don't have access to that kind of information.
But I think that's something that organizations usually grow into, and how people themselves mature in a diverse work environment. How much this kind of switching they do on the fly as they see that somebody who doesn't understand Estonian enters the room, they continue the talk. Just recently, I had an experience with a work event where at some point you discover that, or I discovered that we were continuing the conversation in English with an Estonian colleague after the person who actually spoke English had left the table. And then you need to switch back to Estonian.
But also, I remember one of our team retros, like we had a guy from England, and he mentioned as well, like in the room, sometimes the small talk happens in Estonian, you know, the quick exchange of information, just nothing very, very useful or important, but it still matters, right? So we actually took it in retro and acknowledged this, and then the weird phenomenon started to happen as well. Like we were talking in Estonia in a room, and then whenever we could see like a foreigner enter the room, like you would switch in the middle of the sentence even sometimes. It's like, and then it becomes automatic as well. It's super weird. It's like you start the sentence in Estonian, and then you see someone, and then it's boop in English, continue in English. So yeah. But it's definitely something that you can do with a team at least. So definitely not something to worry about either, because that has resulted even like, you know, when there's a coffee corner, you approach the guys who speak in some other language, then if they recognize you, they will switch to English anyways, I think.
Yeah, Martin, so, I think that's a good point, that these small things matter as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it's company fitting. It's like, it's easier to fit if you feel that you can at any time understand and exchange with anyone.
Yeah. Now, if you would have to compare your previous experience in French companies and now sort of international company, how the work actually differs? Is there an attitude difference? Is there, I don't know, speed, pace, agility,
velocity difference?
Yeah.
I'm not sure there are a lot of difference, because we use Scrum methodologies or Kanban. We produce Jira tickets and stories, and we do review. So it's really similar. So I would say we work the same way, I think. No, there is one thing that is really different. Here, we really don't care about the time. It's more like you have to do something, you do it, but if you arrive at 10 in the morning and leave at 8, that's your problem. In France, there is something that I don't know why people think they have to be there 9 to 6 or just 9 to 7, and even if they do nothing between 6 and 7, they will still be there because the boss is around and they have to just be here and show that they're here. So it is refreshing.
It's refreshing to be more efficient in a way that actually get the work done, and instead of just hang out in the office.
Yeah.
So today, are you doing more home office or going to the office and mingling around?
I prefer working from the office. Because
so that's your preference, and I understand you also have an option to work from home if needed.
Yes. So it's specific. Yeah. In Dynatrace, it's more you can pick how you want to work: fully remote, more remote, or more in office. And I'm more in office, so I can just spend 1 or 2 days a week at my place, which I'm doing right now. But just really for me, I think I really need working from an office, because for the past 2 years and a half, I think it was full remote. And I think at some point I just need to speak in real with colleagues and go for the lunch with colleagues, doing some sport and stuff like that. I was really missing that kind of thing.
I understand that moving to Estonia and starting to work here has been a positive experience for you, and you would probably recommend that to somebody else in France.
Yes, I would say you have to know your expectations.
Okay, but let's come back to that. Would you also recommend anyone from Estonia maybe to pick up their bags and try working in France?
That would be trickier. There is one big issue. It really depends if you want to learn French or not.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you do, because there it's unavoidable.
Yes. My partner is Taiwanese, and she's living in France, and she experimented it a lot of time. You can only speak French with administration and things like that. You just can't go around that. And for someone from another country, it's really hard, because you can't even try English because they will just can't speak. Mm-hmm. So yes, be prepared to learn French.
Now, if you look at Estonia, we have our own insecurities here as a nation, as a culture, right? Every nation has. So we see that we kind of suck in sales, and often also sort of the quality of management is meant. Those are mentioned as sort of weak areas for Estonia. Do you have some confirmations about that, or maybe there are other areas that you see is not really working for some reason, and you don't understand why?
When you say weak in sales,
the sales capabilities. Like just turning and like selling all the fantastic stuff that we have built.
Kicking down the doors and getting all the signatures needed.
Exactly, like closing. It's a tricky thing. We have outsold with weaker products all the time in the world, right?
So would you say it's an imposter syndrome, or it actually might be the case?
I don't really know. I would say that from France, we don't know much about Estonia. So it's more like we don't see all the great things Estonia produce. So maybe the sales skill.
That's an example, right?
Yeah, the sales skill maybe, but it's more like international branding, and it's quite hard to compete with countries 100 times bigger. But there is, because I'm here because I had good. I heard friends speaking about Estonia, so it's more. It's not cheaper selling technique, but
it's always the better selling technique to kind of if you have a friend's recommendation, that's the best thing you can have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some have said that Estonia is a small country with a great PR department. So initial buzz we are able to generate. I mean, not too many people hear about it, but those who will, they will know.
Yeah, because for some reason Tallinn ended up in your kind of list of countries or list of cities as well.
Yeah. So
I think it's still weird for Estonians, I think, to realize that other people might actually know what Estonia is and what Tallinn is, because compared to other big countries and maybe I don't know, feel like big countries don't care about learning about smaller countries that much, or I don't know how it feels like. Why do we feel this way? What do you think?
I have the feeling it's more like no one really care about anyone, but other countries push almost naturally things to other countries. For example, the luxury thing in France, inside France, we know Chanel and we know the brands, but we don't really know that in other countries it's a big thing. Like if you go to China, people are crazy about French luxury thing. And I guess at some point, some marketing guys just started really pushing products in China and doing some advertisement. Mm. So it's more like if Estonia doesn't push hard the product they do and things, it won't happen. It's not like we don't want them. It's more like they have to take the space. Mm-hmm. I guess.
So Pierre, have you traveled around Estonia already? Have you seen the nature as well?
I was in Tartu. I tried Tartu, and also we had some kind of day with the team in a camp somewhere in Estonia. That was nice.
You had an offsite, yeah.
Yeah, the forests are big, but they're very nice. It's very. It reminds me a little bit of France, having forest. That's nice. Having the nature very. You can go to the nature very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Estonia, at least it is small enough so that you can reach anywhere within a few hours, I guess. So whether you want forests or lakes or beaches or whatever, except for mountains, that's a tricky one.
But let's talk about your personal development as well. How much of a kind of Estonian developer community have you discovered? Like, have you had a chance? Like some time ago, we used to have like tons of meetups and different kinds of events, and I'm not really sure how much of these are currently held, especially considering I have been away from work like half a year, and it's I'm starting to feel a bit more distance about that, and not really knowing what's happening in the industry right now. So I should get onboarding, but maybe you can help me out with that. Is there what sort of kind of these community activities are currently ongoing?
So I'm starting very slowly to get into the software engineering community, but the last one was B-Sides, just last week.
Yeah,
it was the first time I took part in that kind of event from not the participant side, but the other side, because there was a Dynatrace booth at that event, and I did some demonstration and things like that. That was very interesting and new to me. So I would say personal development is also that kind of thing, trying to discover the other side of what I usually do. Because, for example, in Lyon, we had some Java meetup. I used to go sometimes, but it's also interesting to see the other side. And for Tallinn, I really don't know when is the next Java meetup, or if there are that kind of thing. I really don't know.
But being there with a booth was definitely a good experience in a way that you had a chance to mingle a lot with a lot of different people from different organizations.
Yes, and that's something I'm really not used to. It's
it might be a quite tiring experience to be there the whole day and kind of do this work.
Indeed. And it's also why I'm in Estonia. I really wanted to leave my comfort zone, and I have the feeling I'm expanding it in all kind of direction. It is language, culture, social interaction, that kind of thing, that kind of events where you are more about interacting with others than just doing your things. So I think it's a great opportunity for sure, but I can feel it's really good to me.
Were you able to attend any of the talks at B-Sides as well?
Yes, I went to one talk with Wise. They were explaining a pen testing story from both sides. So it was really interesting to see the blue team, the red team, what they went through. And it was not a minute-to-minute story, but maybe a day-to-day story. So it's really interesting to be able to see how other people are working and in an industry that I'm really not aware of. Like InfoSec is something, if you are not in it, at least for me, it's a bit abstract. So it was really concrete this time.
Yeah, I think it's important for other disciplines as well, including management, kind of understanding how sales works, like having these kind of stories from day to day, how certain sales was closed. That may be quite interesting for developers because they usually don't have a clue about what sort of interactions take place, what sort of analysis is done beforehand, like what aspects are considered about the approach of getting this thing closed. So I think it's really good that they shared this kind of story for security perspective, kind of understanding the different sides and the thought patterns.
Yeah, I also think it's more like it depends for everyone. Everyone is going through their own journey, and I know that at the beginning of my career, I was really focused on the technical side. It was about developing features, and more I can see that okay, it's something I can do. I know how to develop. So now it's more like thinking about a larger picture and integrating new elements. So at some point it will be really the user focus, maybe at some point the sales part, but yeah, extending the point of view.
So how big of a life changer has Estonian e-government been compared to France? Have you had any contact with kind of online services?
It is so nice. The e-services are so nice. You can do everything with just one card, ID card, you get quite quickly. I'm still exploring the possibilities with this ID card, but I have the feeling it really helps a lot. I can already connect to so many things, and I didn't open account or link accounts, like checking the health website to see the previous checkups and things like that. It's already ready. For the taxes and things like that, there is already an account and I can see things, and it's in English. That's a very great thing. So it's helping a lot.
Yeah, I recently had an experience when I discovered that I don't have a health insurance due to human error in one of the government agencies. It was kind of stopped or cancelled, or some data was not forwarded to certain places. And if I hadn't had the chance to actually sign in and notice that, who knows what would have happened. I would have been in a big trouble at some point when I actually needed it, and starting to do the communication then would have been real challenge. So maybe I think Estonian e-government is definitely one thing that Estonians probably take for granted, and something that is really appreciated by by people who are moving here. Do you think of anything else like that Estonians probably take for granted, but that's really appreciated when moving here?
I don't know if it's taken for granted, but Bolt Auto, when you can just rent a car everywhere in city, that's just marvelous.
Yeah, fortunately, they're now in so many different countries as well.
And not in France.
But recently, I just had an opposite experience. I enjoyed grabbing a taxi in front of an airport, just sitting in and going to place, instead of trying to look up the app and figure out where the car is arriving and kind of doing all that hassle, waiting for several minutes. I was just able to sit in and go.
Old school.
Old school, yes. I think I paid in cash as well.
Yeah. I have had same that I actually walk out of the taxi realizing that I haven't paid.
Yeah, I can't even remember actually last time I had to pay in a taxi, to be honest. Because now I just walk out and that's it.
Yeah, it's seamless. It just works out.
But is there something that you actually miss that is like that what you were used to in France, but it doesn't exist here or is not as prominent maybe as it was in France?
I would say the public transportation is more developed. And that's why it's also great to have Bolt car here, because otherwise it would be very, very complicated to move around.
Also wanted to ask about money, of course. So let's talk about real things. The structure of the compensation package, benefits, monthly salary, like taxes, possible options, etc. What's your sort of a view on that when you now joined Dynatrace in Estonia?
I would say the package itself is quite... it's interesting. So for the monetary part, it's interesting. The salary is quite high.
So it's comparable to the salaries in France?
Yes, actually compared... So not Paris, because Paris is quite something different. But compared to Lyon, it's same or in almost... It's more important in Tallinn than in Lyon. And because in Tallinn structures are bigger, or maybe not structures are bigger, but the compensation package might even be more interesting with stock options and things like that. In Lyon, I'm not really sure it's easy to get some stock options, because for the companies, so maybe they're not in the market, so no stock options, and would be harder. And another thing that is really interesting is everything that is not monetary. At least in Dynatrace, I guess you can find it in other companies, but in Dynatrace you have access to the STB thing. Soon we will have access to the STB thing. And there are also for the health, if you need to see a therapist, you can just see it and it will be paid by the company. And it's something so small, but it means so much, because it's like, take care of yourself, of your mind. And even if it's for their own benefit, it will benefit you, because you will just feel better. So it's a small thing, but a big thing.
And these are kind of the benefits that's where it's difficult to put monetary value or attach monetary value to them, because it's it creates different kind of value, and you might, it's kind of like an insurance in some ways, that you might need it but you don't, and if you do, then you're gonna enjoy having it. These are really good things, and I'm seeing them more and more widespread in Estonia.
Yeah.
Specifically, these kind of mental health support, certain kind of additional healthcare or health insurance, as well as kind of sports benefits.
Yeah, health and sports definitely. They're almost everywhere. Like if you have a company that values people,
it's the new free coffee.
Yeah.
New free coffee and snacks is the health and sports benefits.
But how does that compare to like French companies, like in general? Like let's say just an average, what kind of employee package would you expect if you were to go to French company in France?
If it's not a startup or a very big IT company, you won't have a therapist, free snacks. You won't have Steady equivalent. I'm not sure. Because in France, I think it's more, there is more protection, there is more law that define benefits to the employees. So companies just follow strictly the law. And for example, one of the benefits is the employer has to pay for half the public transportation month subscription. And the employer have to give something like €4 for the lunch of the employee. So it's a nice benefit, but it's by the law.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that it has leaned towards that. So if government is regulating benefits, then companies are doing just that and nothing more. If government is not regulating the benefits, then it's a lot more freedom and flexibility, and surprisingly, organizations do even more.
Yeah, yes. I wonder, like, how does that even change? Like, if all the companies have the same benefits, then what would attract a possible candidate from one company to another?
What's the additional value?
Yeah,
so not providing €4, but €8.
Because in Estonia, like if you have a company which values employees a lot and has all these benefits, you might be inclined to like towards these companies more, right? So what's the edge in French companies? Like how do you get an edge over other companies?
I think it's salary.
Okay.
Because what we usually heard in France is, I will just switch the IT agency to have a better salary. Mm. And people just switch like that.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the companies have more interesting benefits, but most of them just don't really bother.
Yeah, so it's more about the salary itself, right? Which is kind of shame, right? Because if that's the only thing that keeps people, I find that in Estonia, it's like if people want to work for a longer period, they would actually grow more in depth and width of their skill. But if you constantly change companies, then basically you go back every time, you take a step back and reset. So I feel like.
I think Martin, you have lived in luxury, man.
I think I might be. I'm sorry.
You're living in dream, man, and I'm very happy. But most people are not living in this strong culture companies that are people oriented, that have a mission in the world, and have charismatic leaders whose ambition.
And if you feel that you're not in one of those companies, then feel free to quit and join Nortal or Pipedrive or Veriff or maybe even Dynatrace.
Yeah, I mean,
Dynatrace.
To be honest, like that was actually, it was a long time ago. I used to work in an agency-like company, and when I changed to, I worked at Skype, right? So when I moved there, the change was like, I couldn't even imagine that there was so huge change actually. And it's not only about the salary, because the salary wasn't, at that time, it wasn't much higher, but everything else, like inside that company, I was like night and day basically when you change from an agency to a company which has like a long living product which wants to grow their product, right? So definitely differences here.
So I'd encourage people to kind of have these experiences. It makes sense to experience both sides, but also I'd encourage people to consider kind of look back, because sometimes people tend to only look forward and see that I worked in a service company, now I'm in a small product company, I don't like this either. I should go to a big product company or maybe to design company, but maybe the initial kind of choice was the best one, and now you have additional experience to come back and make that position kind of a new thing. So looking back, I think it's a thing, just like health benefits and sports benefits. Is a new coffee.
I would also say that the culture is extremely important. It's
the organizational culture, you mean?
Yeah. Or the company culture. It's more like you can get into a company for the benefits, but you would stay for the culture.
Yes. Yeah, because that's difficult to sell. Everybody's saying that we have an awesome culture, but actually explaining what it means in an interview or series of interviews, it may be difficult.
Yeah, it's tough. You have to experience it actually to understand what is the culture, right?
But when talking about culture, maybe to the end we can talk a bit about differences between kind of cultural differences between teams in France and in Estonia. What have been the cultural differences you have discovered? Like one thing you mentioned was the staying at the office at certain hours. I would say that's kind of a cultural difference. But anything else like that?
I would say less chit chat in Estonia, generally speaking. So it's also true at work. So there is a funny thing. It's more like the just to say okay, or that's fine, or you can put a lot of meanings behind that, and it's so often less chit chat.
Just like simple acknowledgement.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Straight to the point.
Yeah.
So is it a good or a bad thing that coming from someone who is used to chit chat, I guess?
I'm not used to chit chat, but it was in France, it's a way to break ice. So here, I don't really know how, or it takes more time for me to just be comfortable around people, because there is not this chit chat or small talk phase. So it's just slower for me.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Have you been in sauna yet with your colleagues?
Yes. All right. It changed everything.
There you go. So people who don't speak to each other in bus stop or in public transport, when they get together, they get naked and go sauna and stick to each other like 10 centimeters away naked. So that's something that foreigners have always told me, that this is weird. Like, you guys don't interact, but when you like make yourselves really vulnerable, then the connection starts to develop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are running out of time for this episode today and need to wrap it up. But for the end, is there something that you expected us to ask you, but we didn't?
No, I was coming with an open mind, so
no expectations. Good.
Right.
So let's wrap it up then. But if our listeners have any further questions on this topic or to Pierre, then feel free to post them as comments to our Facebook posts about this episode, and we sure try to get them answered. Thank you, Pierre, for attending or joining us here. Thank you to our listeners. as well as thank you to Martin and Tiit for joining me here today. And we'll hear you again in next week.
Thank you.